Months before Jimmy Kimmel got sidelined by ABC in response to pressure from the Trump administration, I talked to the administration's top communications regulator, Brendan Carr, about how he sees free speech and how he sees the government. And early in the interview, I asked him something that, honestly, I thought was a matter of consensus in the US, something that most people who think about speech have agreed on for a long time, which is, where the real threat to free speech in the United States comes from.
The typical long-standing American view is that vastly the biggest threat to free expression in the United States is the government, is you. And you wrote in 2021 a newsroom's decision about what stories to cover, how to frame them should be beyond the reach of any government official. Has your view on that changed now that you're in power?
To my surprise, Carr really didn't bite on that. He sees things very differently.
The greatest threat that we have seen over the last several years really has come from large social media companies that have amassed incredible amounts of power.
That conversation was one of a few times I've really been struck by the extent to which people in this administration's, core experience of speech is of them and of their friends and of their political allies getting, in their view, silenced by social networks and big digital companies. There's someone I know in the Trump administration whose central experience was being a Gawker commenter who got their account deleted. And that goes all the way up to the president of the United States, who after January 6th got thrown off. The site then called Twitter got thrown off Facebook. And that's what Carr is talking about. I think they authentically see the great threats to speech as what threaten their speech, which is what they see as censorship by big tech companies. And in that context, they really feel no compunction about using the government both to prevent those big companies from doing what some see as exercising their own First Amendment rights in deleting accounts that they want to delete, but also in pressuring media companies to silence Donald Trump's political enemies. I think the way they see it, that's basically, fair game because that's what they think was done to them. A lot of this stuff is operating basically outside the scope of normal law. Maybe ABC, maybe Jimmy Kimmel would win a legal case on free speech grounds if they were able to fight it out. That's not where this is playing out. Brendan Carr has huge power to regulate all sorts of other parts of the broadcast television business. Already, by the way, a terrible business. You're here on TikTok. You're not watching things over the airwaves. And what he regulates is the very weak businesses that continue to operate over the broadcast airwaves. And those businesses, are now owned by these companies you've never heard of with names like Tegna. They're all, squeezing pennies out of a dying business, trying hard to survive, and terrified by what the federal government could do to them. They responded to pressure from the federal government by putting pressure on Disney, which I think felt it had no choice but to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. Tap the link in our bio to read more about this.